CJ McCollum hits a clutch jumper to give the Blazers a 1-point lead. Less than 10 seconds left in the game.
This is nice.
That's
Producer
nice.
Bomber from Portland would like to know if CJ stands for clutch jumper, Richard.
That is a beautiful jumper. It doesn't stand for that, but this wasn't in Tampa, was it? No, where is this in Portland?
This was in Portland.
Okay,
What
yeah.
does CJ actually stand for?
You will have to find out. I don't know that about CJ.
Yeah, it stands for Christian James.
Says producer Steve.
Yeah.
There you go. See, on The Jump,
Never knew
we
that.
answer all manner of trivia. Welcome to The Jump. I'm Rachel Nichols alongside Finals MVP Paul Pierce, NBA champ Richard Jefferson, who right before the show came on said that we were just all angry at him for how good he looks. So
That's true.
you
That's
can
true. Look at
make
this.
the
Come on.
judgment
Come on.
about whether that is in
Where's my
fact the case.
close-up? Where do I get a close-up?
You get no close-up on anything. We are socially distanced, in fact, here in our LA studio. Later in the show, you are going to hear Christian James McCollum compare himself to a shark on the court.
Okay.
RJ, do you want to tell us what kind of animal you are?
Nope.
Paul, what do you got?
Grizzly bear.
Grizzly bear?
Grizzly
There we
bear.
go.
Okay.
When I played. Now I'm a teddy bear.
Nice. Aw,
This is so
ladies and
nice.
gentlemen.
Also coming up in this show, the NBA examining the video of Kyrie Irving maskless at a family party
What's going
recently.
on?
Kyrie has missed the last 3 games due to, quote, personal reasons. Stick around for the latest out of Brooklyn. First, though, you know the old Dan Patrick line? You can't stop him. You can only hope to contain him.
That was Dan Patrick.
That's basically the NBA and coronavirus now. Until there's enough vaccine distribution in this country for players to take their turn being immunized, there is no stopping COVID. Not outside a bubble, not this season. But the league absolutely has to try to contain the damage, both to player health and to the league itself, which is why the Board of Governors met this afternoon to go over new, tighter rules that the league has bargained with the Players Association. And they are strict. According to our Adrian Wojnarowski, when players are at home, they can only leave the house for practice, games, exercise outside, and essential activities like grocery shopping. On the road, they can no longer go to even a league-approved restaurant. Players, in fact, won't be allowed to leave the hotel at all, except for team activities. Now, up until today, players have been allowed to have one family member or, quote, close friend
Why are you saying it like that?
visit them in their hotel room when they're on the road. That has been outlawed now, too. And for at least the next 2 weeks, the NBA is also cracking down on in-game activities. More mask wearing on the bench, no more post-game handshakes that include maskless talking or hugging. Woj also says they're telling teams that in-person team meetings can't be more than 10 minutes, and everyone must wear a mask. The stricter rules are an attempt to beat back what, just 3 weeks into the season, has been a growing mushroom cloud of trouble. 5 games have had to be postponed, including tonight's Celtics-Bulls matchup. The number of players in the NBA's health and safety protocols have ballooned from just 11 last Wednesday to 27 by the weekend, and now 34. Some of those cases have come on the road, which presents an even bigger problem. It's not like a player who has been told to self-isolate for a week or 2 can just hop on the team plane. Instead, they find themselves basically locked into a hotel room where the organization figures out if there is a safe way to transport them home. Right now, as I speak, there are members of the Dallas Mavericks who for 5 days have been trapped in Denver, a 12-plus hour drive away from home. And if you look at this map, you can see they're not the only ones. Now, Seth Curry got lucky. He tested positive when the Sixers were in New York, so he only needed to drive like 90 miles down I-95. But you had members of the Bulls organization who were told to isolate for contact tracing when they were in Washington, D.C. That is an 11-hour drive from Chicago that they had to take via COVID-safe car service back to Chicago. Members of the Clippers organization were in Salt Lake City. The ones who were being held out for contact tracing took separate Sprinter vans on the 10-hour ride back to L.A., then continued to isolate there. Miami was stuck up in Boston when they were hit with COVID issues. They had to fly players out on 3 separate planes, dividing up the healthy players from the positive player from those who had just been isolated for contact tracing. Indeed, it's the contact tracing that has been the most disruptive to the season so far. For every one player who tests positive, there are usually multiple other players who have been around him in close enough contact. The NBA feels it also needs to isolate them to prevent a much more dangerous or larger scale spread. That's absolutely the smart thing to do, but it's also what's been wreaking havoc. Take the Wizards as an example. Just in the past few days, they have had to sit Bradley Beal down for about 48 hours after the Celtics' Jason Tatum tested positive. Beal and Tatum had been guarding each other for much of the game the teams had played the night before, then had a close, maskless conversation afterward. Beal ended up passing several COVID tests and was eventually allowed to return, piling the Wizards to what was a great upset win over the Suns last night. I mean, seriously, look at this reverse layup, guys.
Bradley Beal.
Man. Okay.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
All right, Washington's win, powered by him, powered by that, should have been the kind of victory a team can really build on early in the season. Except when Coach Scott Brooks woke up this morning, he was told that 2 more of his players had to enter the protocol, which means practice was canceled. Again, Brooks noted it has been like this for the entire past month. The Wizards have not held a single shoot-around. They've had multiple practices canceled, and a key player suffer a significant injury that could, at least possibly, be related to all the stopping and starting of physical activity these guys have had to do. It has been a mess. The new measures approved today won't be able to prevent all cases of spread. Players still have to play games with or against each other. And we can expect some players to push back on the limits to their outside-of-work lives, particularly some who have already had COVID and believe they're protected by antibodies, even though, as Brian Windhorst and Zach Lowe reported today, the NBA has had some cases of reinfection among players. Ooh. Still, the hope is that by tightening at least some measures, the league keeps things from spiraling further. You can't stop it. You can only hope to contain it. Boy, I really can't wait until the day we can once again say that and have it only apply to basketball. But today, unfortunately, is not that day. All right, guys, this is a lot, right? A lot that we've had to deal with. And I want to bring in our insider, Brian Windhorst, to talk a little bit about that. I mentioned the story that you reported out with Zach Lowe. Players who previously tested positive for COVID are coming up with positive tests again. What are your sources saying, Brian?
Yeah, this is obviously concerning. It's happened in the last few days or week or so, 2 weeks, several players, and this is something that, the CDC doesn't have a handle on yet. We really don't know how long immunity lasts. We don't know whether it has to do with viral load and things like that are all medical terms. We also, there's also players who have been testing positive since March, and that's been 10 months. And maybe if they tested positive in March or April, when the testing wasn't as developed and there were possibilities of false positives, that some players who may test positive again didn't really have it the first time. But this is something that the league believes has happened. They believe they've had several incidences of reinfection. And this is an education point for the league, Rachel. As you were mentioning, one of the things that has been happening, there's so many players, hundreds of players, I really do believe, in talking to people that have had this virus over the last 7 to 10 months, believe that they have a level of immunity and they're operating like that away from the court. And that could be contributing to the rise in cases. So part of this reality is that they have to educate players and say, just because you've had it doesn't mean you can act like you would in a normal time.
How do you think everything that we just discussed, everything that the league has put out, they're going to now start doing, is going to sit with teams and players, and how effective do you think it's going to be?
Well, being stuck at home is going to be a big pushback because there are players who are routinely going out to dinner with one another, routinely spending time away from their homes. Again, because so many of them believe they have antibodies, and frankly, most of them probably do. But the problem, Rachel, is not necessarily the infections, it's the contact tracing. It's when one player on a team becomes positive, it's that 6 or 7 others have to be shut down, and now you're shut down for a week for that, and you're missing all these games. Obviously, they're worried about infections, but they're also trying to limit how many guys get affected so that maybe they can survive, but they can keep playing through a positive test, one on a team, as opposed to shutting down most of the roster.
All right, I want to bring Richard and Paul back into the conversation. So given everything, Richard, I mean, you remember the first month or so of lockdown in most states around the U.S. You were not supposed to go outside for anything, and that is basically, except the grocery store. And that is basically what they are telling players the rest of the season is going to be like until they're vaccinated. How would you guys react to this if you were still playing today?
Well, one, let me compliment the NBA first. The fact that they're not trying to rush to the front of the line to get all of their players vaccinated, that's step one, because this is costing millions of dollars. They dedicated a ton of money to get all of the stuff done in the bubble. So it's like, they're like, hey, no, it needs to be first for, for our first line people, healthcare workers. Those are the people. That being said, the contact tracing, I don't want to say it's too much, but there's no way it's like, well, you guarded him, so you need to go away, because they have testing that.
That's rare. I will say the Bradley Beal, Jason Tatum thing is rare. They haven't done that as much.
Yeah, but that looks like where it's going. They're trying to like, okay, well, maybe if we put you away, then it's like, yo, everybody was guarding Jason Tatum, right? So it's like you have to only do it when someone tests positive. When you're trying to sit players down and trying to do this stuff, it's going to add more, because now I understand contact tracing, but you can't do it when you're playing games to this extent.
Yeah, it's kind of contradicting. You know, I go into a game and I'm playing them all game, but I go on the protocol for talking to them after the game. And so, but this is a big concern for me, because I know people that's been affected by COVID-19. And, you know, as the cases grow, people are dying out here. So if I'm a player, you know, this not only affects the player, but it affects, you know, family members if you're around them, kids, people you're close to. And this is a real concern of mine. I think we really need to really take a step back as a league and take this a little more serious, because me personally, I know people have been affected by COVID-19 and has lost their lives. And, you know, as the number of cases continue to grow, I'm not even sure about even moving forward. I know there's a lot of money involved in the NBA, but is it worth a person's life at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what you're seeing today, these new protocols, it is what you say, Paul. It is the NBA saying, all right, we got to take it more seriously even than we have been. We've got to tighten up. I want to make a point about the contact tracing, though, Richard. I think the Beal-Tatum case is a bit of an outlier. Most of what we've seen with the contact tracing guys who have been out of games have been teammates, right, who have been in close proximity without a mask to a teammate who tests positive. And basically what these new rules today are basically forbidding is any of that kind of contact.
Yeah.
So that if in the future a guy tests positive for COVID, at least with